Hi, welcome to the Jalt Call podcast. I'm your host for the day, Brian Gallagher, and I am joined by Darren Kinsman from the PIESIG. That's the Performance in Education Special Interest Group, of which he is the president. Darren, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So just for all our listeners out there, I am, like you, a member of the PIESIG, which is one of JALT's special interest groups for performance in education. Darren, so I want to just get this right for your background. So you are a certified Canadian teacher with a CELTA and experience at junior high, high school and university levels. Mm-hmm. I got it from your LinkedIn. Of course, you're open to new ideas how to create more effective learning environments, which of course we all are in COL. Interested in performance in education and blended learning. Blended learning is something that I especially trained in with my open and distance education postgrads. And of course, you're the president of the Performance in Education group, and you are the host and producer of the PIESIG podcast.
Yeah. Yes.
Congratulations. So how is your PIESIG podcast going?
Oh, it's going well. It was a bit difficult at first, especially the editing. Mm-hmm. And, but I think over time you develop a kind of workflow, right? Mm. But every once in a while you'll have a situation where it's like 20 minutes of editing and it's fine. Mm. And then the next time it could be 4 or 5 hours. It really depends on who you're talking to and what happens during the recording. I'm sure you're aware of that.
Right. So, of course, this is kind of like our part B, because this is a collaboration that we are doing together, right? Mm-hmm. So, of course, in the first part of this kind of like just a 2-part series, so, of course, you interviewed me for the PIESIG podcast. Right. And as is right in academia, we have some reciprocity. So I'm now getting to interview you for our podcast. So just kind of like background-wise, so the listeners maybe have never heard of you before, and so they want to kind of like maybe know a bit of your background, like who is Darren Kinsman. So, of course, now you work at Tohoku Medical and Pharmaceutical University, right? That's your main place of work.
Yeah, that's the main gig. Yeah, I'm in three different departments there.
What are the 3 departments that you work in?
There's the medical department and pharmacy and pharmaceutical science, and soon nursing.
All right. So your students are very sharp and good at what they do, right?
Yeah. I mean, the medical students are surprisingly, they're able to multitask in an amazing way. Mm. You know, they can be studying their biology book and doing my assignment and having a chat and surfing online all at the same time.
They're very capable. They are very, very, very capable. Of course, they should be very smart. Very, very smart. So you also work at Miyagi Gakuin Women's University, right?
That's right, yeah.
And so people might know that from Mark Helgeson. So, of course, he was a very famous JALT contributor and in the Mind and Brain SIG. But you're also working at Miyagi University of Education.
Yeah, they're also really good students.
And so I guess Miyagi must be like a pretty special place if you've got all these medical and educational universities, right? You're lucky to.
Yeah, I think we punch above our weight up here in Sendai.
So it's quite different. So of course for you, so you've got 2 undergraduates. So you got a BA in political science and a BA, right. A BEd, a bachelor in education from St. Thomas University in Canada. But your postgraduate MA is from Toronto Metropolitan University.
That's right. Yeah, it was a 2-year program. The first year was in Toronto, and the second year was at what we called at the time George Eastman House, which is a museum in Rochester, New York.
Oh, New York?
New York, yeah.
So that's a year in Toronto and then a year in New York?
That's right, yeah.
That sounds pretty good as a student, right?
No, it was pretty cool. And, going to the museum every day was an interesting experience,
So I've been to Toronto, but the UOT, University of
U of T,
Toronto.
University of Toronto, yeah.
Yeah, I've one of actually the captain of my football team. He was working at Scuba University. So Scuba, of course, his speciality is sports science and sports psychology.
Right.
And so yeah, we went to when he got married. We went to U of T. We actually played a soccer match with alumni and professors of U of T, and it was nice. I liked it there. And the other university was McGill University,
Yeah.
which
Montreal.
yeah, when we went to McGill, we kind of thought this is strange because this looks like Europe, but it's in the wrong continent, you know. So the university buildings there are very much like the buildings in Glasgow in Scotland. So it felt very much kind of like for me very very homely. But I think people said that they'd dismantled some of the buildings and then brought them by boat to Canada, which I still don't know if that was true or not.
Well, all we can say is good old days. You wouldn't be doing that now.
You wouldn't be doing that now on a budget at all. Right, okay, so that's us for part one. Join us in part two. We're going to get into talking about research and expertise, and we're going to look at the links between call and performance in education. See you after the break. Darren, you are the president of the PIESIG. Can you tell the listeners just a little bit about what the PIESIG entails?
The PIESIG basically says that one approach to education is performance. And normally speaking, there's an audience involved, but there doesn't always have to be. And it's a pretty wide umbrella, so it includes quite a lot of things. I mean, if you think about it, most people think about drama and stage performance, but it's much more than that. It can also be process drama where there's no audience at all. It can be musical. So we have an article written recently by Heather Kretschmer, which talks about using playlists in the classroom. So there's not really any performance in the normal sense of the word. It's more about, I think, active learning and embodied learning. It's kind of hard to pin it down, but I think there's certain aspects that are kind of tracked through most of it, and that's like, you know, student ownership and movement and imagination, not just sitting there passively.
So for drama, many people in like spoken performances, usually people think of there not being a lot of technology used in that kind of like arena. But I know from my own experience that I use technology all the way through my courses, and you know, so we're having students record, you know, like skits of their parts of their drama, if not the whole thing. You know, like they're creating the dialogue in, you know, like some word processing system. They're also then editing like those videos or audios in another system, and then eventually, you know, like trying to promote it or present it using some other kind of tool. Can you tell us what kind of tools do you use yourself, and what ones that maybe students might be using?
Well, the phone gets... I'm kind of ambivalent about the whole smartphone thing because once they come out, it's really difficult to compete with the content on the phone. But generally speaking, and I think we talked about this off air, is that in the first class, especially in my communications class, I have them give a short introduction, and I pair them up. One, you know, they switch phones, so the person who's being recorded has the copy of themselves, not the other person, and they will use that as a baseline. So at the end of the semester, they're going to do another presentation on video, and I tell them if it's not any better, then Please don't show me. But it should be a lot better at the end, and that normally works wonders. Like you just see a huge difference because throughout the semester they're getting a lot of presentation experience, and also you can use it for drama, like if they're doing a skit or if they're doing readers theater. You could have like 4 or 5 people standing on the stage doing readers theater, for example, and each one of them gives their phone to someone in the audience, so they all have their own recording of what happened. And then you can sit down and reflect on it and what can they do better.
So that would be like one person is just recording one of the players in a line of players?
Well, they would record all the players.
Right. Okay. So for readers theatre, so I have a good idea of what readers theatre is, but I'm sure that our call listeners have got no idea what a readers theatre is like. Can you explain a little bit about what that would look like?
Readers theatre is basically reading aloud and with emotion. So what I tell, there's different levels of it, but the most basic level is you would, for example, you'd have a text or maybe some dialogue, and the students would practice reading it so that it has a lot of emotion in it. And what you tell them is that when they get on the stage, they don't have to make eye contact with anybody. And that relaxes them a lot. But I say, you have to have emotion. So they'll read the text with emotion, kind of like a voiceover for, a cartoon. They're behind the mic and they're trying to really get into the character, but they don't actually have to connect with the audience with eye contact. And there are different levels of it. You might want to move up a level where they have some costumes and movement on the stage, but generally speaking, it's just reading aloud. And that's where you can bring in pronunciation, intonation, all these different aspects of speaking.
Is that similar to what actors do in a movie, like before they get involved with like sets and costume and makeup, that they sit around and they have like a what's it called? A talk through or a read through, a reading?
Right. Well, at the most basic level, you could get there, but the most basic level, they don't have to interact with each other on the stage. But I think in those readings you're talking about, there is some kind of, they're looking at each other and saying the lines and feeding off each other to some extent as a responder to what's being said. But in readers theater, it doesn't have to be that way, especially if it's a text. But if you're going up to higher levels where it's like a play, then yeah, they might be more like that. But again, they don't have to really look at each other or look at the audience. It's more about their voice.
So I kind of like imagine that if I was back in the COVID time, that I would have, maybe kind of like a 5x5 grid of faces on the screen in a Zoom, where students, just read their part, at the right time. So the problem with that, which I guess we find through experience, is that there are lots of visual cues that people miss because they can't see that interaction between people. So I guess like if you're doing it live, you get to like out the corner of your eye, you like to see like when somebody is moving and when somebody's breathing and when it's their turn and when they're getting ready and all of it, which you struggle to do when things are digital. Can I ask, back down to COVID times, how did your classes change when you were doing like fully remote?
Well, there was one instance I think I mentioned to you off air once, is that I had this new class and I was in a room that probably held about maybe 100 people. And I had my little laptop open and the Zoom open. And I had 50 students and I couldn't see any of them because none of them had a camera on their computer. So I was just speaking to this black screen for, I think it was an hour and a half, something like that. Not good.
Not good. So I guess maybe now that we're beyond that COVIDian times, that people can just go to the store and buy a good quality webcam. But I remember during that period that I had a low quality webcam and struggled to buy a a decent one, like, because when you went to the shop, they were just all sold out, because suddenly people who had a desktop, like needed to suddenly buy, this edition, because of course all the laptops have them built in. So I also want to ask you a question about technology. So now, I each year prepare students for using technology, like for the regular lessons. But now all the PCs have Copilot or Gemini or something kind of like built in. Did you experience like any difficulties like with the students just in 2025, just last year with the AI?
How so?
So I mean, when you give instruction in a class, you like students like, please search for this or please do that. They wouldn't like just use like a Google search anymore. Like it was like, hang on, and I'll AI it, like I'll chat GPT it, or like.
I did notice that they were using a lot of kind of AI apps that I wasn't aware of. So they could, for example, they could be or may be recording my voice and it's going into text and then being translated into Japanese on their screen.
Right.
And then they can respond in Japanese and it comes out in English. And so it's all being done by AI or mediated through AI.
Right.
But I was thinking about it before the interview. When I was studying languages a long time ago, we had high-tech stuff called a dictionary. And later, when I came to Japan, they had these e-dictionaries, right?
Yep.
Made by
Like the
Sony and Toshiba.
Casios. Yeah.
Casio. And I was fascinated by those. I got one right away. But they were designed by Japanese for Japanese, right? So it wasn't so user-friendly for a non-Japanese person. And now that we've moved on to the phone, if you tell them that you don't want them to use their phone, which I often do, then they're kind of left high and dry, right? Because they don't have a dictionary anymore and they don't have an e-dictionary anymore.
Yeah.
It's a difficult issue. And now you've got the issue of AI that you've brought up there where they can kind of bypass any kind of thinking.
Right. Yeah, the electronic dictionary. So I did a little bit of research, not last year, I think it was the year before, on because I had noticed that over the last 5 years that people had stopped coming to class with Denshi Jusho, the electric dictionary. So the most common was like the Casio X Word. And they were just doing everything with their phone. They're just doing the translation, so they're looking words up, but I thought, like that market would have been, like almost decimated by the advent of, like all the smartphones. So I did research into global sales of digital dictionaries. And the astonishing thing is that actually sales now are higher than they have ever been before globally. Like even in Japan, like they're up. And I thought, but how can that be? Because I don't see any students using them. But I think in schools, maybe there's a more strict rule on not having a smartphone at school, whereas an electronic dictionary is, is a legit tool, or an approved tool that can be used. And I think like now, like the global sales, are actually kind of like really high as well. I don't know how long that trend would continue, but I was quite surprised that the sales figures went up. But maybe it's just easier access, like to microchips and all the rest of it.
Yeah, that's very surprising. I found like it would be hard to go back to it if I were studying languages again because you're at the word level.
Right.
Whereas now you can be at the phrase, sentence, paragraph, and even book level.
Right. And I think like it's also like those, like a good one costs you about 40,000 Japanese yen. And I think a lot of students thinking like, why would I buy something that just does one thing?
That's right. Yeah. Dedicated object.
even that kind of idea, and so you look around a classroom and you say, like, how many students have got a watch on? And they're thinking, why would I have a thing that just tells the time? So I guess maybe more and more students have got like a smart watch. But again, there's the kind of financial barrier, for students to buy all these things, So 40,000 yen's quite a chunk of change. They always think it's very expensive, but you can get a smartphone in the store for like 0 yen, and then a monthly for very little. So on those electronic dictionaries, so I recently found out that because their technology has kept on developing, that they're more than just an electronic dictionary now. Like some of them have like songs on it with song lyrics.
All right.
Some of them have like videos. Like some of them, like my youngest daughter's, she got one for school, and it has NHK animations in it that are in English. I can't remember what the name is. There's some dog, an NHK dog. It's a cartoon that was quite popular a couple
Are
of
they
years.
able to update the software in them and get like new content, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. But it has Wi-Fi. Yeah, so I'm sure there's a possibility for doing something. But
I'm sure they'll have AI in them soon.
yeah. So I think it's difficult to to try and separate the students from the AI these days. So for you, when you're doing your drama, like, can you tell us like what classes that you do your drama in? So I only teach like a first year communication class where I do my drama, and maybe in maybe some other. I teach a lot of like writing classes. So can you tell us like what kind of classes that you teach and like how you do it, and with these kind of like medical students, like what kind of experience you can give the students?
Yeah, well, when we're thinking about performance in education, it might be a good idea to say that it's much more than just drama. So, the original name of the SIG was the speech, drama, and debate SIG, right? And so it does include speeches and presentations and things like that. So with the medical students, it's a very set curriculum, so we don't get into that at all. With the pharmacy students and the pharmacy science students, we do what I mentioned there was getting them to record their initial introduction at the beginning of the year, then at the end of the year. And also they're doing it throughout the year. And I'm saying to them, look, this is what you're looking for, eye contact, volume, intonation, pronunciation. If you think you're quite happy with what you've got, let your partner see it, and then you can show me once you're confident. And some of them have a lot of confidence. And sometimes their confidence is maybe a bit too high, and other times it's a bit too low. And I would just say, this is good, but you're not looking at the camera at all, so just try it again. So they're doing self-reflection and also getting some teacher input into it. In the writing classes, it's very easy to forget to tell them that they're writing for an audience. And sometimes they write, I don't know who they write for, maybe themselves or maybe for me. It's hard to say. Once I started saying to them, okay, you're going to write something, and then I want you to do a reader's theater with it. So maybe they've written a story or some type of essay, expository essay, for example. And I'll say, okay, in your group, you're going to divide up this essay and you're going to read it on stage with lots of emotion. And now that changes everything, right? It's one thing if I write something. It's another thing if you start asking me about it on a podcast. Right? So that really changes everything. And I tell them, when they're writing, share the ideas with their partners on before they get on the stage. And then I'll say to them, for example, maybe they're working in a group of 5. I'll just say, find the essay that you guys really, really like, and we're going to use that one for readers' theater. So that way they're writing for an audience, and they're also being able to express what they've written verbally, rather than just keeping it as a text that I would correct and give back to them and move on to the next one.
Right. So that's really important that, like, I guess it's a famous monologue from William Shakespeare where he says, all the world's a stage. And so it's very important to remember, like, who the audience is. I also do that in my writing classes. And I say to the students, like, so in this version, like in this draft, like, your main audience is me, right? So you're writing for me, the teacher. And that gives them like that clarity. Okay, I know we'll have to do it. And I'll say to them, I'm looking for like compound sentences, or I'm looking for complex sentences. So make sure that you've got it, like, so they know like what they're doing. Or I'll say, like, you're writing for, like such and such. So I think it's very important that to give them an idea of like who the audience is. Like, right. I think sometimes we talk about, like using your formal voice, like, or informal voice. So I guess if you're doing like spoken for performances too, then all of these kind of skills are good for even when they have to speak in Japanese, right? If they know about volume and tone and pitch and timing and things like that.
Right.
Right. So for technology, is there any technologies you're planning to use this year in 2026 for your teaching? Is there any strategy or any tool that you've got planned for the semester?
I don't think I'm going to do anything any different than last year. I do a lot of. I always have them recording things and submitting that for comment.
Just in their smartphone, right?
On their smartphones, yeah, and they submit it to like Google Classroom. And I don't think I'll be doing any big change ups. How about you?
No, I think there's too many changes. Like if we're like on, feel like a surfer, just going from wave to wave to wave to wave. Like yeah. It's not good. Like it's not consistent. It's not great for quality. Right. But I was just thinking that, so for my students, for the last number of years, when they recorded a video, they used the software CapCut, 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 which is a free tool which they use very effectively to edit videos, like to enter sounds, like to put on like subtitles. Can you give us an idea, like what kind of like tools that your students are using up in Tohoku? Like what's popular?
I think they're really into ChatGPT. As far as editing, I don't think they get into any editing. I know when I interviewed Ashley Ford Mihashi, who's in our group, she does a lot of filmmaking, right?
Right.
So I think her students get into a lot of editing tools, but I think in our classes we don't really have time to get into kind of making small, short movies. So I think that's where the editing would come in. However, I make them aware of their environment so they don't need to edit as much.
Right.
So, don't stand at the window with your back to it so, the light is shining around their head and they can't see their face and things like that.
Right.
And just be aware of their surroundings. Yeah, and that way you don't need to do a lot of editing.
Yes, I do that in that comms class that I teach. So they're making videos almost every week or second week, and so I don't have to give them explicit instruction. I just let them like try different things, like near the window or far apart from each other or very close up, and so they kind of they quickly work out like what is good and what isn't good,
right.
And then we can kind of like consolidate the learning by putting it all together. So Ashley Ford Mihashi that you mentioned before, so she is involved with the Real Voices Film Festival, which is, I guess, to try and help students exercise their language and 21st century skills. So their festival is for students who are telling their stories through movies that they make.
Yeah.
And so there's quite a number of people. So, of course, Ashley is at Nagoya City University. We'll post a link into the podcast for everybody if they're interested to let their students enter that competition. I think maybe It's usually around the start of the year. But
She had a really good presentation at the Okinawa Steam Festival. The amount of content was just amazing. I'm hoping she can get that online so people can get access to it.
Right, okay. And so that, of course, the Okinawa Steam Festival was sponsored in part by JALT Call SIG. So that was a small conference in Naha, Okinawa for science, technology, engineering, arts, of which Pi is a big part, and mathematics. So that conference is, it looks like that's going to run again next year.
Seems like we're getting it started, yeah.
Yeah, so it encouraged people to get down there. We were joined by some call members. So Adam Jenkins came down. So of course he's a big user of Moodle. He does Moodle Moots. He's at the Shizuoka Institute of Technology, and of course George McLean, who has been on our podcast before. George is a long-term member of Call. So yeah, hopefully we can blend those things together and give people a chance. So of course you and I enjoyed Okinawa. I made a drive round the island for a bit, saw a couple of beaches and got in the water, and
And the food was good too.
the food was good too. Yeah, it was very enjoyable. Recommend it for everybody to go to next year. Right, okay, that is us for section 2. Join us in section 3, where we're going to talk about some future projects and some recommendations. Join us after the break. Hi, welcome back to the JALT Call podcast with me, Brian Gallagher, and of course Darren Kinsman. Darren, we're just going to wrap up here in section 3, talking about near future projects, what's coming up, like conferences, tools, books, maybe website recommendations, etc. So can you tell us, for the PIESIG, what kind of events have you got planned for the rest of this year and maybe into next year?
We've got a forum at the PANSIG 2026 in Nagoya. And we've also have a Zoom meeting planned. And we're thinking Encore Okinawa Steam. So people will have a chance to expand on some of the presentations that happened during that conference.
Right, and so people who couldn't afford to, didn't have the time to go to Okinawa, could they join in that?
Yeah, this is a great chance to get a much deeper view than we had actually in person.
Right, okay. And so maybe good for people getting a little taster of what it is without having to travel.
They'll get the taster without the tan.
Right, okay, so of course that's going to be that's in May, late May in Nagoya at the PANSIG, and then what's on after that?
Well, in the summer normally we have the Nojiri conference,
which is in Nagano Prefecture.
Nagano Prefecture, and David Kluge, who's the founder of the SIG, he has a cottage there, so he likes to invite people down, and we stay at hotels near his cottage, and it's a nice time by the lake. We can do our presentations, then go for a walk by the lake or a bicycle ride by the lake.
Very good, very good. So, of course, David Kluge was also one of the founding members of the Call SIG.
That's right, yeah. And I heard your podcast with him. It was really good.
Yeah. So a lot of people like that because David's got a lot of experience. Like he's been doing JALT stuff for a long time, and David, of course, is very creative. Yeah. So
he was my first guest, by the way.
He was your first guest.
Yeah.
David's a good speaker. So of course David's retired now.
He is, yeah.
And so he is a wealth of knowledge. Actually, David is going to come to our conference this year. He's going to join our conference team at the front desk at the conference at Konan University in Nishinomiya. That's June 12th through 14th. So it'll be great to. A lot of people know David. It'll be good to catch up with him there. So that's going to be in the summer. The Nojiriko would be what, August
or
July,
September.
August or September, right? Okay, so you can escape the summer heat and get up to the cooler climate.
That's right. I mean, it was perfect climate there. I didn't have any trouble falling asleep. It was just not hot or humid at all.
So that will be in summer, so probably July or August, and then after that would be the next thing. What would be JALT International in November?
Yeah, that's right. And normally we have our own thing going on at that time, but so we've got the PIESIG is in Nagoya,
Yep.
and the JALT International is in Nagoya. So we didn't want to have a third thing in Nagoya, so we're just going to not have that this year. So we're just going to focus on JALT 2026.
Yeah, so I don't know what the decision making is for having, like the two largest conferences of JALT, like in the same location, in the same place. Like last year was, I guess it was Tokyo and Chiba. So it's basically, like almost the same kind of like place. And also JALT Call was in Tokyo as well. So I was quite fed up going up to Tokyo, like 3 times in the 1 year.
Right.
So I always like going to a conference in like a different place, like so you can learn a bit of, like the culture and the scenery and the food, like in those different places, like I think that 3 years before that we were down in Kumamoto, which is great because Kumamoto's got a beautiful castle.
That's right. Yeah.
We've been to Matsumoto, So I don't think I'll be going to PIESIG this year, but I'll maybe go to the JALT. I'll maybe go to the JALT International. So after November, then the next one would be back to the STEAM conference in February of 2027.
Seems likely, yeah. Sapporo, we haven't decided yet.
So I guess normally PI is having 1 year in Hokkaido and 1 year in Okinawa, and they had a kind of rhythm for a few years there. One year and one the next. Right. So of course that's good. So the people of Hokkaido can escape. Like if they're fed up with the snow every single day, you get away for a moment, and the people from the warmer climates can get up to the snow and experience it, for a week. Right. So as far as the tools, so of course you are running your PIESIG podcast. So you're recording in Zoom, I take it.
Normally, yeah. So like Kim Raquel, when he did the podcast with me, he actually came to my studio. And at that time, I had only one microphone. So we were kind of leaning into it, leaning back, leaning into it, leaning back. So that was kind of fun. But the sound quality was quite good. And he played his guitar and did some no chants and things like that. So it was kind of cool.
He's a very accomplished musician, isn't he?
He's accomplished in many areas.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, okay. And so how do you do your editing for sound?
Right. So I record on Zoom, but I'm also recording right now, for example, directly onto my GarageBand. So I'm going through my Synco D1 shotgun mic. That's going into my Zoom F3 field recorder. And then that's going right into my GarageBand. So I've got that nice clean vocals. And it's got this wide range for editing, so you can do anything with it. And then I'll take the vocals or the audio from the Zoom. For example, for you and I today, I'll take your audio and put it in. And then I'll use GarageBand for all the editing for that.
All right, okay. So is GarageBand, that comes free with a Mac, or is that?
That's right, yeah, it's free, yeah.
It comes free.
Yeah. I mean, it's not ideal, but I'm kind of used to using it, so I'm pretty adept with it now.
Right. So normally for us, we record either in Zoom or in Riverside Studio, and then we can edit. I normally edit the sound in Audacity, which actually has had a makeover because they've changed the staff that are running it now. They're trying to modernize it without monetizing it because it's open source.
Right.
So there's that kind of delicate balance between like making it free and accessible for everybody, which of course is what we ideally want to have things as free or near free as possible, so that people can can use the tools. But how many years have you been using GarageBand for, or GarageBand?
GarageBand? Oh, I've used it personally for probably 20 years or so.
Right. So just constantly updating the versions.
Yeah, but I haven't used it extensively until the podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, for Audacity, I used it years ago when I was doing my postgrad because it was part of the course and they told us the software to use. And it's not actually, the interface of it has not changed so much over the years, which is the good thing about it. But it's very easy to kind of pick up, and it's obviously something that you can incorporate into students' work. You know, like if you want to try and introduce them to something that's got simple tools, and it's of course it's free. So I'm a PC and Android user,
Right.
so I don't have access to the GarageBand, but Audacity works on all the different platforms. So before we finish off, are there any other kind of like tools that you're using, either yourself for creating things, or that you use for students? Like I mentioned, CapCut was a very good film editor for students to use on their phone.
Right. Well, for the podcast, AI helps me set up the outlines for the podcast. And if I want to have some kind of image, like the last podcast I made, I made a poster for it. So I used ChatGPT for that, and then it didn't do a very good job. Just as a simple example, I asked it to put the stage on the back of the bicycle, because this is for Kamishibai, which is when, back in the old days, these older Japanese guys would cycle around and they'd have a little stage in the back of their bicycle and make little plays for children. So it kept putting it on the front. And I'm like, I said to ChatGPT, where is it? And it said, it's on the front. And I said, what did I ask you to do? You said to put it on the back. And I said, why didn't you put it on the back? And then it gave me a big explanation. And it took about 20 minutes to get it on the back. And then after that, I put it into Canva. And I started playing around with it. And then after that, it went into my photos, and I started adjusting the lighting, colors, and saturation and things like that.
Right. Okay. So it's a multi-step process to get it just to the finished item
That's
that
right,
you want it to. Yeah, I think like many people, especially students, think that that ChatGPT is the cure for all ills. That you can just you can just say whatever you want and it's going to magically appear. But yeah, I think you have to train the students to train the AI to get the output that you want. I think garbage in, garbage out.
Making the prompts, because prompt garbage is in, prompt garbage out.
Right. Yeah. So I think that for students, when you're giving them work to do, they're thinking like, okay, just slam it into an AI, and you're thinking, like, well, what are you slamming into the AI? Like think it out first. But it's back to a point that you said before about like students and the dictionaries and using AI, and it was something that Paul Rain from Ego AI had mentioned before about how the software that we're using, the AI, was cleaning up content on the input. And then it was, like, of course, giving the output, but, we didn't want the input corrupted. Like, we didn't want it filtered. We didn't want it corrected. Like, we wanted the students' errors to be there.
What kind of things was it filtering out?
So if you are translating something, so you're going from your language into the second language, and so you're making mistakes in your own language, or you're making mistakes in the second language, however you're going through it, and the computer is tidying it up on your side before it goes out in the backside. So, for example, like my youngest daughter uses the Amazon Alexa device, and she'll give a broken sentence, but actually the device will know what she means. If you just say like, Alexa, alarm, start 6 a.m.
Right.
so it's not a complete sentence. You're like, but the thing will then suddenly the output says like, oh, alarm confirmed for tomorrow 6 a.m. You're thinking, so it's tidied it up, which we don't really want the AI tidied up, because then students' output or students' input is going to be degraded. So we want to try and keep students learning how to make proper sentences and to construct things better, not having AI, like making it easier.
And we got into that on the other podcast, right? Where I was interviewing you, and I asked you, what do you say when a student says, "Why do I need to learn how to read when ChatGPT can read it to me?"
Yeah.
So if you want to know. If you want to know Brian's answer, you can come listen to
my
podcast
on the PIESIG podcast with Darren. So of course we'll put notes in to join it together. So of course, this is part B of our collaboration. Of course, like part A is over on the PIESIG podcast. So we encourage listeners to go over and have a link and listen to the wide variety of guests and experts that we have over with our sister website over there, our sister podcast. Anyway, Darren, thank you very much for joining us today. I look forward to see you at these other events that are coming up. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in today. We'll see you all next time on the JALT Call podcast. Right. See you next time.